Hey BookTube, this is Greg from Coffee/Books. Say hello to Moscow traffic. It's always terrible. I am back home. I went home to the States for a week. It was awesome. It's always good to be home. I miss my friends and family, of course, and of course, whenever I'm there, I have to do a lot of errands and all that kind of stuff because I'm only in the States for 2 times a year. And full disclosure, I did no reading when I was home. I was so busy. I also wanted to just catch up with friends, and by the time I get home at night, when I would normally read, I would just pass out and wake up and do it all again the next day. So I did no reading for about 2 weeks. I got back a couple days ago, getting back into the groove at work, feeling very tired, kind of jet lagged. So, yeah, so the reading was on halt. I did get to go to a lot of awesome bookstores in the States. I was so excited when I first went into like a huge Barnes & Noble at the mall. It felt like heaven, and just Books A Million and some other like small independent bookshops. But anyway, I wanted to do a video just to update everyone and say hi, and then I missed a lot of you. I feel like I need to go and watch a lot of videos and kind of catch up where you guys are all at this point. I finally finished today. I finished on my lunch break. I finally finished A Little Life by Hanya Yanagihara. I read the first half before I left on my trip because it's 719 pages, and my goal was to finish reading it while I was on my trip, but that just didn't happen. So I carried it with me everywhere I went, thinking I'd read it, and I did it. When I got back and got settled, I wanted to finish the second half because it's so good. And I wanted to film a video to talk about it today since I finished it on my lunch break, and I kind of have all these thoughts about the book twirling through my mind, and I didn't really want to forget any of them. So, I'm not really going to give any spoiler alerts. I'm just going to talk about some of the characters and some of the background of it and kind of the things that it made me thought of. So, as I said, probably I think in the last video I talked about how I started reading this. It's about four college friends, four guys, and it spans from their freshman year of college all the way up through the death of three of them into their late adulthood, 50s and 60s. And their really intricate relationships they have with each other, with their lives, everything that's happened, and the progression from being college freshmen all the way up to, professionals with families and all the stuff that goes along with that. I would say the main character, each character kind of has a backstory and plays a big role in their history and kind of the whole storyline. But I would say the main character, Jude, who it's obvious he has a really troubled past, which we don't learn about until much later in the book. It's about his kind of, I don't know how to say it, his journey and his relationships and his own problems. I said I wouldn't be a spoiler alert person, so I'm going to try. So forgive me if I stall because I don't want to say how it ends. I kind of didn't love how it ended. It was one of those things where, like, you're at the part of the book where you really love what's going on. You're like, oh, finally, this is good things are happening, and it's leading up to everyone being all happy and all that stuff. And then you notice there's still like 100 pages left, so you're like, okay, it's not going to end this way. Something's going to happen in those 100 pages, which is exactly what happens in this story. I will say I did cry multiple times in the last probably 200 pages. It does get very emotional. But because the writer does such a good job in describing these relationships and describing these characters that it just feels real. There were a few grotesque parts. Jude cuts himself habitually. And it's very descriptive on his actions of cutting himself in the blood and the flesh and all that. So if you're one of those kind of people, I kind of just glossed over certain paragraphs because I didn't want to read too much into it because it just grosses me out. Not that it's a bad thing, it's just the physical description of skin and blood is just not for me. Anyway, so I just want to point out some different things about the characters. The first thing I want to say that I really liked about the story is that it was a real emotional description between men. As you find out, some of them are gay, and they're all kind of very diverse. JB, he's Haitian American, and his family grew up kind of worshiping him, the ground he walks on. He's an artist, kind of has an attitude. Jude, who we find out was an orphan's turned child prostitute, turned lawyer. So he had a very interesting past that led up to what he become. Willem, whose family was Swedish American ranchers in Wyoming. And the interesting thing about him, he becomes a movie star, that I thought was a really good part of his development was that he had a younger brother who was mentally and physically disabled, and it played a big role in his life. Not in a happy way. It was kind of obvious that his parents didn't want this other child, and they treated it like it was more of like a pure burden. But Willem always took care of him and loved him so much, and went away to college. And even though he couldn't speak, he would have the nurses, like the nursing home, hold up the phone to him and talk to him. So it was really heartwarming, I guess you could say. And Malcolm, who comes from a really rich family, and he becomes an architect. And ever since he was little, he was always into designing houses. And it kind of becomes a metaphor for it was something he can control. And he was always making like these little model houses when they were in college. And then he became a designer and designed his friends' apartments and all that kind of stuff. So I think it's a really diverse group of characters. And of course, the other people that they run into is diverse as well. Another thing I liked that it touched on was Jude becomes really close with one of his law professors, Harold, and his wife, Julia. And when he turns 30, they formally adopt him. Now, of course, after you're 18, why would you need to be adopted? You're an adult. But I really liked what it stood for and how they just loved him, even though they actually didn't find out anything from his past until 20 years later, any of the details. It just goes to show you that, you can still embrace these kind of things at any stage in life. He was 30 years old and he finally, had a family, which is, what he's always wanted. So, yeah, those are some of the things I wanted to touch on. I definitely recommend reading it. Another thing I did, I don't know if any of you guys do this, I purposely did not look up anything about the author while I was reading it because I tend to start reading something I'm like, oh, this is a great book. I wonder what influenced the author. I wonder where he or she is from or what else they wrote. And so then I'll go on Wikipedia or go on BookTube and I'll start learning about this person. And I didn't want to do that because I didn't want it to influence what I interpreted in the story and how I read the story. So I actually have yet to look up anything about him or her, which I will do probably later. So the way it was written, I want to read more of what this person wrote if they have. So I definitely recommend it. Like I said, it is a commitment, 719 pages, totally worth it. Lots of tears, lots of skipped paragraphs due to the detailed descriptions, but very deep and very thoughtful. A really good portrait of relationships between people when you're in college and then when you're an adult and then when you're an older adult, at the different stages of life. So highly recommend it. Anyway, I hope to make some more videos soon now that I'm back at work and back to being settled down and jet lag's gone and all that stuff. If anyone else has read this book, I think it was popular a while ago, so I'm sure tons of you have read it, and want to leave any comments below or point out anything that you would like to talk about, it would be great because I'm dying to speak to someone about this story. Other than that, wherever you are, I hope you have a good day and see you next time. Bye.